The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the streets of Portland into rivers of reflected neon and blurred headlights. Inside the Copper Kettle Diner, the air smelled of burnt coffee, bacon grease, and the faint sweetness of maple syrup that had seeped into the vinyl booths over decades. It was the kind of place where truckers stopped at 3 a.m., where lonely souls nursed cold cups of decaf until sunrise, and where the waitresses knew everyone's order before they sat down. Elena Vasquez stood behind the counter, her dark hair pulled back in a bun that had come loose hours ago, wisps framing her tired face. She was 28 years old, though the fluorescent lights made her look older, casting shadows under her eyes that spoke of double shifts and restless nights. Her uniform, a pale blue dress with a white apron, was stained with coffee and ketchup, badges of honor in a war she fought every day just to keep her head above water. She moved with practiced efficiency, refilling coffee cups without being asked, sliding plates of eggs and hash browns across the counter with the precision of someone who had done this 10,000 times before. The diner was nearly empty tonight. Old Mr. Chen sat in his usual corner booth, reading yesterday's newspaper through thick glasses, his tea grown cold an hour ago. A young couple occupied a table near the window, whispering to each other with the intensity of people either falling in love or falling apart. And then there was the new arrival, the man in the $1,000 suit who had walked in 20 minutes ago, shaking rain from his shoulders like a dog, his eyes scanning the diner with the kind of assessment that put a price tag on everything. Marcus Whitmore. Elena didn't know his name yet, but she recognized the type. Mid-40s, silver threading through his dark hair in a way that probably cost a fortune to maintain. His watch caught the light every time he moved his wrist. A Patek Philippe, she guessed, having seen enough of them on the wrists of men who left $2 tips on $40 tabs. He had chosen a booth in the center of the diner, not near the window where the draft came through, not near the kitchen where the noise leaked out, but exactly in the middle where he could see everything. Elena approached with her notepad, her smile automatic and professional. "What can I get you?" He looked up, and for a moment something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition of something he hadn't expected to find in a place like this. "Coffee, black, and whatever you'd recommend." "The meatloaf's fresh, comes with mashed potatoes and green beans." "I'll take it." He handed her the menu without looking at it again. If you're enjoying Elena's story so far, a quick like really helps us share more inspiring tales like this. It was a question she'd heard 1,000 times, usually from men who thought conversation was a prelude to something else. But his tone was different, curious, not predatory. 5 years, she said, which was true, though it felt like 50. "That's dedication. That's survival," she corrected, and walked away before he could respond. In the kitchen, she clipped the order to the wire above the grill where Carlos, the night cook, was scraping grease off the flat top. He grunted acknowledgement without turning around. Carlos had worked here longer than anyone, his hands scarred from burns and cuts, his English limited, but his understanding of the diner's rhythm perfect. He and Elena had developed a shorthand over the years, a language of nods and glances that made words unnecessary. She poured the coffee, noting how her hands trembled slightly, not from nervousness, but from exhaustion. She had been awake for 18 hours. Her daughter Sophia was at home with Mrs. Kowalski from downstairs, probably asleep by now with her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Sophia was 6 years old, brilliant and curious, and deserved so much more than the cramped one-bedroom apartment they shared, more than the discount store clothes and the donated toys from the church. Elena carried the coffee back to the booth, setting it down carefully. "Your food will be up in a few minutes." "Thank you." He wrapped his hands around the cup, and she noticed the calluses on his palms, unexpected on a man who wore suits that expensive. "I'm Marcus, by the way." She didn't offer her name. Waitresses learned early that names created intimacy, and intimacy led to complications. Instead, she nodded and turned away. But he spoke again, his voice carrying across the diner's quiet. "Do you play chess?" The question stopped her mid-step. She turned back slowly, her expression carefully neutral. "Why?"
He gestured to the booth beside him, where a chessboard sat forgotten,
pieces scattered from some previous game that had been abandoned mid-play. The board was old, the wood scarred and faded, the pieces mismatched, a knight from one set, pawns from another. It had been there as long as Elena could remember, a fixture like the jukebox that only played songs from the 70s or the clock above the door that ran 5 minutes slow. "I noticed it when I came in," Marcus said. "Haven't seen a chess set in a diner before." "Mr. Chen brings it," Elena said, nodding toward the old Nan in the corner. "He teaches kids from the neighborhood. Used to be a champion back in Shanghai, or so he says." "And do you play?" Elena hesitated. The truth was complicated, wrapped up in memories she didn't like to examine too closely. "I used to." "Used to?" Marcus leaned back in his booth, his coffee forgotten. "That's like saying you used to breathe." "It's been a long time." "How long?" "Long enough that it doesn't matter anymore." But it did matter, and they both knew it. Chess had been everything to Elena once, back when she was young and the world seemed full of possibilities instead of obstacles. Her father had taught her when she was 5 years old, in the small house in Sacramento where they had lived before everything fell apart. He had been a carpenter, his hands always smelling of sawdust and varnish, but his mind had been sharp and clear. They had played every night after dinner, the pieces moving across the board like dancers in a ballet he choreographed with patience and love. "The game is about seeing," he had told her, moving his knight to threaten her queen. "Not just what is, but what could be. Every piece is a possibility, every move a choice that echoes forward." She had learned to see those echoes, to read the board 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. By the time she was 10, she was beating her father regularly. By 12, she had won the state junior championship. Coaches had talked about potential, about scholarships, about a future that sparkled like the trophies on her shelf. Then her father died. Suddenly, a heart attack at 42, collapsing in the garage with a half-finished bookshelf beside him. And the world had rearranged itself into something darker and harder. Her mother, never strong, had fallen apart completely, and Elena had become an adult, the one who made sure bills were paid and food was on the table. Chess became a luxury she couldn't afford, a dream she packed away with her father's tools and her childhood. Marcus was watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. He said suddenly, "Play me." "I'm working." "One game, when your shift ends." "My shift ends at 2 a.m. and I have a bus to catch." "I'll pay you." He reached into his jacket, pulled out his wallet. $500, one game. The number hung in the air between them like smoke. $500. That was rent. That was groceries for a month. That was the breathing room she desperately needed. "Why?" she asked, suspicious now. "Why would you pay that much for a game of chess with a waitress?" He smiled, and it transformed his face into something younger, more vulnerable. "Because I'm tired of playing people who let me win. Because I saw how you looked at that board, like it was an old friend you'd betrayed. Because I think you're better than you're pretending to be, and I want to know if I'm right." Elena looked at the chessboard, at the scattered pieces that seemed to whisper her name. She thought of Sophia asleep at home, of the overdue rent notice on her refrigerator, of the car that had broken down last month that she couldn't afford to fix. She thought of her father's hands moving pieces across a board, his voice gentle and certain. Every choice echoes forward. "One game," she said finally, "when my shift ends, but I'm not making any promises about how I'll play." "Fair enough." Marcus extended his hand across the table, and after a moment, Elena shook it. His grip was firm, his palm warm. "I'll be here." The rest of the shift passed in a blur of routine tasks, refilling coffee, clearing plates, wiping down tables. But Elena's mind was elsewhere, walking paths across a board she hadn't touched in years, remembering patterns and strategies her father had taught her. The Sicilian defense, the King's Indian attack, the Queen's gambit, they came back to her like muscle memory, like a language she had spoken fluently once and had never quite forgotten. Carlos brought out the meatloaf, and Elena delivered it to Marcus's table. He ate slowly, methodically, occasionally glancing at the chessboard as if he were studying it, preparing. She watched him when she thought he wasn't looking, trying to read him the way she used to read opponents across a board. He had the confidence of someone who was used to winning, but there was something else too, a hunger, a need to prove himself or to the world. At 1:30, the young couple left, their whispered argument unresolved. Mr. Chen folded his newspaper, left $3 on the table, and shuffled out into the rain with a nod to Elena. The diner was empty, except for Marcus and a drunk who had fallen asleep in a back booth, snoring softly into his folded arms. Elena wiped down the counter, counted her tips, $32 for 8 hours of work, and felt the familiar weight of disappointment settle over her shoulders. She untied her apron, hung it on the hook in the back, and told Carlos she was leaving. He grunted, already cleaning the grill for tomorrow's breakfast rush. When she returned to the main room, Marcus had set up the chessboard properly, the pieces arranged in their starting positions, black and white, facing each other across the scarred wooden battlefield. He had moved to one side of the booth, leaving space for her to sit across from him. "White or black?" he asked. "Black." She always chose black, and had since she was a child. Her father used to tease her about it, said she liked the challenge of playing from behind, of making the second move matter more than the first. She slid into the booth, and the familiar feeling washed over her. Anticipation, focus, the narrowing of the world down to 64 squares and 32 pieces. Marcus moved first, e4, the king's pawn 2 spaces forward. A classical opening, aggressive and controlling. Elena responded with c5, the Sicilian defense, her father's favorite. She could almost hear his voice. Let them think they're in control. Let them push forward. Then strike where they're weakest. The game began in earnest, pieces moving across the board with purpose and precision. Marcus played well, better than well. He had clearly studied the game seriously, knew the standard openings and defenses, and could think several moves ahead. But there was something in the textbook about his play, something that suggested he had learned chess from books and computers rather than from the heart. Elena, on the other hand, played like someone who had once breathed chess, who had understood it not as a game, but as a conversation, a dance, a battle of wills and imagination. She moved quickly, intuitively, her hands finding pieces before her conscious mind had fully processed the position. The rust was there. She missed a tactic on move 7, failed to see a knight fork on move 9, but underneath the rust was something else, something that had never left her. By move 12, she had equalized the position. By move 15, she had a slight advantage. Marcus's confidence began to crack, his moves taking longer, his brow furrowing with concentration. "You're good," he said, not looking up from the board. "I told you I used to play. You didn't tell me you were a master." "I was never a master, just a kid who was good at a game." "That's not what this is." He gestured at the board, where his position was slowly crumbling under the pressure of her pieces. "This is art." Elena said nothing, but something in her chest loosened, a knot she hadn't known was there beginning to unravel. She moved her bishop, threatening his queen, forcing him to retreat. He did, but the retreat opened up a weakness in his king's side, a gap in his defenses that she exploited ruthlessly. 3 moves later, she had won his queen for a bishop and a knight. 5 moves after that, his king was exposed, his pieces scattered and uncoordinated. He stared at the board for a long moment, then slowly, deliberately, tipped over his king in surrender. 23 moves, he said quietly. "I haven't been beaten that badly in years." Elena leaned back against the vinyl booth, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline that had carried her through the game drained away, leaving only the familiar tiredness and the awareness of the late hour and the long bus ride home. Marcus pulled out his wallet, counted out $500 bills, and placed them on the table between them. "You earned this." "I can't take this." "Why not? We had a deal." "Because it feels like charity." "It's not charity. It's payment for a service. You showed me something tonight that I needed to see." "What's that?" He smiled, that same transformation that made him seem younger and more real. "That I'm not as good as I thought I was. That there's always someone better, hungrier, more talented, and that sometimes that person is serving you coffee in a diner at 2 in the morning. Elena picked up the bills slowly, folding them carefully and putting them in her pocket. The money felt heavy, significant, like it carried weight beyond its monetary value. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "Men in $1,000 suits don't usually end up in places like this." Marcus looked around the diner, at the cracked vinyl booths, the flickering fluorescent lights, the ancient jukebox in the corner. "I was driving," he said finally. "Just driving, trying to clear my head. My company is about to close a deal worth $300 million, and all I could think about was how empty it felt. How all the money, all the success, all the wins didn't mean anything anymore. So I got in my car and drove until I found a place that felt real. And you found the copper kettle. I found you." He met her eyes directly. "What's your name? Your real name?" She hesitated, then answered. "Elena. Elena Vasquez." "Elena." He said it carefully, like he was tasting it. "That was a beautiful game, Elena. Your father taught you well." She was startled. "How did you know about my father?" "The way you play. That's not self-taught. That's not learned from books. Someone who loved you taught you this game, and you loved them back enough to remember everything they showed you." Tears stung Elena's eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. She blinked them back, fiercely. "He died when I was 13. I haven't played seriously since." "That's 15 years of rust, and you still destroyed me. Imagine what you could do with practice." "I don't have time for imagining. I have a daughter at home, rent due, and another shift starting in 10 hours. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding flickering in his eyes. He reached into his jacket again, pulled out a business card, and slid it across the table. "This is me, Marcus Whitmore. I run a venture capital firm downtown. If you ever want to do something other than serve coffee, call me." Elena looked at the card, thick, expensive paper, embossed letters, an address in one of the gleaming towers that dominated Portland's skyline. "I don't know anything about venture capital." "No, but you know how to think. You know how to see patterns, anticipate moves, plan strategies. You know how to win even when the odds are against you. That's more valuable than any MBA." She picked up the card, slipped it into her pocket next to the money. "Thank you for the game, Mr. Whitmore." Marcus. "And thank you, Elena. I'll be back." "For another game?" "For another chance to learn something real." He stood, left $100 bill on the table for the meatloaf and coffee he'd barely touched, and walked out into the rain. Elena sat alone in the booth, the chessboard still between her, pieces scattered in the final position of their game. She reached out, touched the black queen that had dominated the board, remembered the feeling of seeing the patterns emerge, of knowing 3 moves ahead what would happen, of the pure crystalline clarity that chess had once brought to her life. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean. Inside the Copper Kettle Diner, something had shifted. Some door had opened that Elena thought was locked forever. She didn't know what would come of it. Probably nothing. Probably just another memory to pack away with all the other might-have-beens. But for the first time in years, she felt something other than exhaustion. She felt the possibility. Elena's alarm went off at 9 a.m., 4 hours after she had finally fallen into bed. She reached out blindly, slapping at the clock until the buzzing stopped, then lay staring at the water-stained ceiling of her bedroom. The apartment was quiet. Sophia had already left for school, Mrs. Kowalski having taken her as she did every morning, a kindness Elena could never adequately repay. She forced herself up, every muscle protesting. The $500 sat on her dresser where she had placed it before sleeping, still folded, still carrying the weight of the impossible night before. Had it really happened? Had she really played chess with a billionaire in the diner, beating him soundly, taking his money like it was a normal transaction? The business card was there too, cream-colored and elegant, Marcus Whitmore's name embossed in black letters. On the back, he had written something in neat, precise handwriting. Scholar's mate doesn't work on someone who knows the game. Thank you for the reminder. She smiled despite herself, remembering how he'd tried that old trap in their game, the 4-move checkmate that worked on beginners. She'd seen it coming 3 moves away, had countered it easily, and even felt a little disappointed that he'd tried something so elementary. But maybe that had been his point, testing her, seeing if she was really as good as he suspected. The shower was lukewarm, the water pressure terrible, but it woke her up. She dressed in jeans and an old sweater, made coffee in the pot that only worked if you hit it just right, and sat at the tiny kitchen table with her laptop, a donated machine from the library's technology program, slow and prone to crashing, but functional enough for what she needed. She had 2 hours before she needed to pick up Sophia from school, 2 hours before her evening shift at the diner started. Normally she would spend this time sleeping, but today she couldn't. Her mind was racing, moving pieces across invisible boards, seeing patterns everywhere. Elena opened her laptop, waited for it to wheeze to life, and typed Marcus Whitmore into the search bar. The results flooded the screen. Marcus Whitmore, founder and CEO of Whitmore Ventures, net worth estimated at $2.3 billion, featured in Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. Photos of him in expensive suits at charity galas, shaking hands with senators and celebrities, standing in front of gleaming office buildings with his name on them. But there were other articles too, ones that told a different story. Marcus Whitmore, who had grown up in rural Oregon, son of a mechanic and a nurse, who had put himself through college working construction jobs, who had started his first company in a garage, and who had built his empire through relentless work and calculated risks, who had never forgotten where he came from, who funded scholarships for working-class kids, who sat on the boards of half a dozen nonprofits focused on economic inequality. Elena read article after article, piecing together the picture of a man more complex than the expensive suit and the easy confidence suggested. There were profiles that called him ruthless, others that called him visionary, employees who swore by him, competitors who swore at him, a divorce 3 years ago, no children, a reputation for working 18-hour days and expecting the same from everyone around him. And there, buried in a profile from 2 years ago, a small detail that made Elena's breath catch. Marcus Whitmore was a chess enthusiast, had been since childhood, maintained a rating of 2100, expert level, just below master, and played regularly in local tournaments under an assumed name. So he had been testing her, or testing himself, or maybe testing whether the world still held surprises, whether there were still people who could challenge him in ways that mattered. Elena closed the laptop, finished her coffee, and sat in the quiet apartment with her thoughts. The money on her dresser called to her, but she tried to ignore it, trying to think about what it meant beyond the immediate relief of bills paid and groceries bought. When she was 13, just after her father died, her chess coach had sat her down for a serious conversation. Coach Morrison had been a stout woman with steel gray hair and hands that moved pieces across a board with the authority of someone who had spent 50 years studying the game. "You have a gift, Elena," she had said, her voice gravelly from decades of cigarettes. "A real gift. I've coached a lot of kids, and maybe 1 in 100 has what you have. The question is what you're going to do with it." Elena, I'm still raw from grief, still trying to figure out how to be a child and a parent at the same time, had said nothing. Coach Morrison had continued, her eyes shrewd and understanding. "Chess is a beautiful game,
but it's also a cruel one. It demands everything: time, focus, dedication. You can't be good at chess and good at other things. You have to choose. "I have to take care of my mom," Elena had said quietly. "I have to work. I have to make sure we don't lose the house." "I know, and that's a choice too. Maybe the hardest one. But I need you to understand something." Coach Morrison had leaned forward, her expression intense. "Talent like yours doesn't come along often. If you walk away from it, you're not just walking away from trophies and ratings. You're walking away from a part of yourself. And one day, you're going to wake up and feel that absence like a missing limb." Elena had tried to fill it with work and responsibility and the fierce love she poured into Sophia. But it was always there, a hollow space in her chest where the game used to live. Elena stood, walked to her bedroom, picked up the $500 and Marcus's card. She made a decision. At 3 p.m., she picked up Sophia from Jefferson Elementary. Her daughter burst out of the doors with her usual energy, backpack bouncing, dark hair flying, talking before she even reached Elena. Mama, we learned about fractions today and I got all the problems right, and Mrs. Chen said I was doing really well, and can we get ice cream, please?" Elena knelt down, wrapped her in a hug, breathed in the smell of her shampoo and playground dust. "Maybe. How about we go to the library first?"
The library. Sophia's eyes lit up. She loved the library almost as much as Elena did, loved the smell of books and the quiet corners where stories waited to be discovered. They took the bus downtown. Sophia pressed against the window, pointing out dogs and interesting clouds and construction sites. Elena watched her daughter with a mixture of love and fear so intense it hurt. Everything she did, every choice she made was for this little person who had come into her life unexpected and unplanned, but utterly essential. Sophia's father had left before she was born, disappeared into the landscape of bad decisions and worse timing that had characterized Elena's early 20s. She had been working at a different diner then, had been trying to save money for community college, had been nursing dreams of maybe, someday, doing something more. The pregnancy had derailed all of that, but it had also given her Sophia, and she had never once regretted that trade. The Portland Public Library was one of Elena's favorite places in the city, a beautiful old building with high ceilings and rows of books that seemed to stretch forever. They went straight to the children's section, where Sophia immediately found a book about space exploration and settled into a beanbag chair to read. Elena approached the reference desk, where a librarian named Tom worked most afternoons. He was young, probably fresh out of library school, with glasses and a perpetually friendly expression. "Tom, I need help finding information about chess coaching and about getting back into competitive play." Tom's eyebrows went up. "Chess? I didn't know you played." "I used to. A long time ago. I'm thinking about maybe, I don't know, picking it up again." "That's great." Tom turned to his computer, fingers flying over the keyboard. "There's actually a pretty active chess scene in Portland. Let me pull up some resources." 20 minutes later, Elena had a folder of printouts, information about the Portland Chess Club, which met twice a week at a community center downtown, details about online platforms where she could practice and maintain a rating, a list of coaches who offered lessons at various price points, information about local tournaments, state championships, even national competitions. "There's a tournament next month," Tom said, highlighting a flyer. "Open to all players, different sections based on rating. If you're just getting back into it, you'd probably start in the reserve section, but it could be a good way to see where you are." Elena looked at the flyer, at the date circled in red, November 15th, just 6 weeks away. The entry fee was $40. Prize money for the reserve section was only $100 for first place, but that wasn't the point. The point was stepping back into a world she'd left behind, claiming a part of herself she thought was gone forever. "Thanks, Tom. This is really helpful." She collected Sophia, checked out a stack of books for her daughter, and they took the bus home. Elena made dinner, spaghetti with sauce from a jar, garlic bread made from day-old rolls she'd brought home from the diner, and listened to Sophia chatter about her day,
about fractions and playground politics, and the book about space she was reading. After dinner, after Sophia's bath, after the bedtime story and the kisses and the whispered, "I love yous," Elena sat alone in the kitchen with her laptop and the folder of chess information. She created an account on chess.com, one of the online platforms Tom had recommended, and played her first game in 15 years. She lost. Badly. Her opponent, someone with the username Chessmaster2009, demolished her in 20 moves, exploiting weaknesses in her position she hadn't even seen developing. The loss stung, pride and disappointment mixing in her chest. But she played another game, and another, and another. She lost more than she won, her rating dropping with each defeat, but with each game something came back to her. A sense of the board's rhythm, a feeling for how pieces coordinated, an understanding of pawn structures and tactical patterns. At midnight, she forced herself to stop, to save energy for her shift the next day. She had won 3 games and lost 7, her rating settling at 1400, competent club player level, nowhere near where she'd been at 13, but respectable for someone who hadn't played seriously in years. She fell asleep with combinations running through her mind, pieces moving across invisible boards, her father's voice whispering strategies in her dreams. The next 2 weeks fell into a pattern. Elena worked her shifts at the diner, picked up Sophia from school, cooked dinner, tucked her daughter into bed, and then played chess online until exhaustion forced her to sleep. Her rating climbed slowly, 1400, 1450, 1500. The losses still stung, but they taught her, showed her where her thinking was lazy or predictable, forced her to see deeper and think more clearly. She started visiting the Portland Chess Club on Tuesday nights, the one night each week that Mrs. Kowalski could watch Sophia a little later. The club met in a basement room of a community center in southeast Portland, a dim space with folding tables and plastic chairs, and a dozen people hunched over boards moving pieces in concentrated silence.
The players were mostly men, mostly older, mostly surprised to see a woman walk in and ask to play. But chess was a democracy of skill. Gender, age, background didn't matter once the game started. Only the moves mattered, only the mind. Elena lost her first 3 games at the club. Then she won one, then another. The other players began to notice her, to seek her out, to discuss games with her afterward, analyzing positions and suggesting improvements. One of them, a retired mathematics professor named Dr. Bernard, took a particular interest in her play. He was in his 70s, with wild white hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mischief. "You have good instincts," he told her after a game where she'd sacrificed a piece for a devastating attack on his king. "But you're playing from memory, not from understanding. You're replaying games you learned as a child, patterns someone taught you. To get better, you need to understand why those patterns work." "How do I do that?" "Study tactics puzzles, end games, classic games by the masters, and play stronger opponents whenever possible." He paused, studying her with those sharp eyes. "You're serious about this, aren't you? This isn't just a hobby for you." "I don't know what it is yet," Elena admitted. "I just know I need it." Dr. Bernard nodded as if she'd said something profound. "Chess is many things. A game, an art, a science, a battle. But for some of us, it's also a lifeline, something that makes sense when the rest of the world doesn't." Elena thought about that on the bus ride home, watching the city lights blur past the rain-streaked windows. A lifeline. Yes, that felt right. Chess gave her something the diner never could, a space where her mind could stretch, where her talents mattered, where she was more than just a waitress scraping by. But she still hadn't called Marcus Whitmore. His card sat on her dresser, a possibility she hadn't quite worked up the courage to explore. What would she even say? "Thank you for the money? Want another game? I'm still just a waitress with a kid and a dream I'm not sure makes sense?" The answer came from an unexpected direction. It was a Thursday night, mid-October, and the diner was busy. Carlos was swearing in Spanish in the kitchen, backed up on orders, and the other waitress working tonight, a college student named Jennifer, was struggling to keep up with her section. Elena had just delivered a plate of chicken and waffles to a booth when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Hello, Elena." She turned. Marcus Whitmore stood there in another expensive suit, this one navy blue, his hair damp from the rain, but his smile was genuine. "Mr. Whitmore?" "Marcus." She felt suddenly self-conscious, aware of her stained apron and her hair falling out of its bun. "Is this a bad time?" "I'm working." "I can see that. I was hoping we could talk, when you have a moment." Elena glanced around the diner. The rush was starting to ease, most tables already served. "Give me 10 minutes. I'll meet you at the same booth." He nodded and moved to the booth where they'd played chess, where the old board still sat with pieces arranged in some abandoned game. Elena finished her immediate tasks, checked with Carlos that he had everything under control, and finally allowed herself to sit across from Marcus. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would. I've been traveling for work, or I would have come sooner." He looked at her intently. "You've been playing." It wasn't a question. "How did you know?" "You have that look, the one chess players get when they've been studying. Focused, intense, like you're seeing through the surface of things." Elena felt something shift in her chest, a recognition of being seen. "I joined the Portland Chess Club. I've been playing online. I'm getting back into it." "That's good. That's really good." Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about our game, about you, about this diner, and the life you're living, and the talent you're wasting." "Excuse me?" A flash of anger cut through her surprise. "That came out wrong. I'm sorry." He held up his hands, placating. "What I mean is, you're brilliant, truly brilliant. And you're stuck here, serving coffee to people who don't see what you are, what you could be. That's a waste, and I think you know it." "I have responsibilities, a daughter, bills, a life that doesn't stop just because I remember how to play a game." "What if I could help with that? What if I could offer you an opportunity that would let you explore your talent while still meeting those responsibilities?" Elena studied him warily. "What kind of opportunity?" Marcus showed her photos on his phone, a beautiful modern space with glass walls and a dozen chess tables. "This is a program I've been developing, a chess academy for talented kids from low-income backgrounds. Free coaching, equipment, tournament support, everything they need to develop their potential, regardless of whether they can afford it." That's wonderful. But what does it have to do with me? I need a director. Someone who understands chess at a high level, who understands what it means to struggle, who can relate to these kids and help them see possibilities beyond their current circumstances. Someone like you. Elena stared at him, her mind struggling to process what he was saying. "You're offering me a job." "I'm offering you a chance to do something meaningful. The position pays $60,000 a year to start, with health insurance and benefits. The academy opens in January, which gives us 2 months to get everything ready. You'd be working with kids, teaching chess, but also mentoring them, showing them that intelligence and talent can be pathways out of poverty." $60,000. Elena did the math automatically. That was more than double what she made at the diner working 60-hour weeks. That was health insurance for Sophia, a better apartment, maybe even a car that actually worked. That was the breathing room. That was a possibility. "I don't have any experience running something like this. I'm not qualified." "You're more qualified than you think. You understand the game, you understand struggle, you understand what it means to have talent and no resources to develop it. That's the experience that matters." He paused, his expression softening. "I saw something in you that night we played, Elena. Not just chess skill, though you have plenty of that. I saw someone who refuses to be broken by circumstances, who keeps getting up no matter how hard life knocks her down. That's what these kids need to see. Not some privileged coach who's never known what it means to choose between dinner and rent."
Elena felt tears threatening again, pushing them back. Why me? You could hire a master-level player, someone with credentials and experience. I could, but credentials don't teach kids to believe in themselves. You do that by example, by showing them someone who came from where they are and found a way forward. He leaned back, giving her space. I'm not asking you to decide right now. Think about it. Come visit the space, see what we're building. Meet the board members, ask questions. Then make your choice. And if I say no, then I'll respect that decision and find someone else. But I think you already know what you're going to say. Elena looked down at her hands, at the calluses from carrying heavy plates, the small burn scar from a splash of hot coffee, the chipped nail polish she couldn't afford to replace. She thought about Sophia, about the apartment with its water-stained ceiling and broken heating, about the bus rides in the rain and the constant exhaustion that never quite went away. She thought about her father, about the way he'd looked at a chessboard with the same love other people reserved for their children, about Coach Morrison's words, "Talent like yours doesn't come along often." "When can I see the space?" she asked quietly. Marcus smiled, and it was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "How about Saturday morning, 10 a.m.? I work Saturday mornings. What if you didn't?" He pulled out his phone again, typed something quickly. "I'm texting you the address. Saturday at 10. Take the day off. I'll cover whatever you would have made in tips. You can't just watch me." He stood, placed a business card on the table, a different one this time, with an address and phone number handwritten on it. "This is the academy location. Don't be late. And Elena." He paused at the edge of the booth. "Bring Sophia. I want her to see what her mother is capable of."
Then he was gone, walking out into the rain, leaving Elena sitting in the booth with a business card in her hand and her entire future suddenly uncertain and full of terrifying possibility. She finished her shift in a daze, her mind racing through scenarios and possibilities and fears. When she got home, Mrs. Kowalski was asleep on the couch, Sophia curled up next to her, both of them breathing softly in the dim light of the television. Elena paid Mrs. Kowalski $20 she could barely afford, but that was worth everything for the security of knowing Sophia was safe, and carried her daughter to bed without waking her. Then she sat at the kitchen table with her laptop and researched everything she could find about Marcus Whitmore's philanthropic work. There were photos of him at ribbon-cutting ceremonies for community centers, articles about scholarships he funded, interviews where he talked about economic mobility and the responsibility of wealth. It all seemed genuine, but Elena had learned long ago to be suspicious of things that seemed too good to be true. She played chess online until 2 a.m., her rating now hovering around 1550, her play becoming sharper and more confident with each game. Then she fell into bed and dreamed of her father, of him sitting across a chessboard from her, smiling with pride. "You are seeing it now," he said in the dream, his voice as clear as if he were really there. "The patterns, the possibilities. This is what I wanted for you, mija. Not the trophies or the ratings, the understanding that your mind is a gift, and gifts are meant to be used." Friday passed in a blur of work and anticipation. Elena told her manager at the diner that she needed Saturday off, the first time she'd requested a day off in 2 years, and faced the expected resistance. "We need you Saturday morning," Jerry said, his perpetual scowl deepening. Jerry was the day manager, a heavy-set man in his 50s who treated the diner like a military operation and the staff like unruly soldiers. "That's our busiest shift." "I know, I'm sorry, but this is important." "More important than your job?" Elena looked at him, this man who had never once asked about her life outside the diner, who docked her pay when she was 30 seconds late, who treated her like she was replaceable, because in his world she was. "Yes," she said quietly, "it is." Jerry's scowl deepened, but he waved her away. "Fine, but don't make this a habit." She wouldn't, because somehow, standing in that grimy office with the schedule printouts and the smell of old coffee,
Elena knew that her time at the Copper Kettle was ending. It had been a refuge when she needed one, a paycheck that kept her and Sophia fed and housed, but it had never been a future. It had only ever been survival. Friday passed in a blur of work and anticipation. Elena told her manager at the diner that she needed Saturday off, the first time she'd requested a day off in 2 years, and faced the expected resistance. "We need you Saturday morning," Jerry said, his perpetual scowl deepening. Jerry was the day manager, a heavy-set man in his 50s who treated the diner like a military operation and the staff like unruly soldiers. "That's our busiest shift." "I know. I'm sorry, but this is important." "More important than your job?" Elena looked at him, this man who had never once asked about her life outside the diner, who docked her pay when she was 30 seconds late, who treated her like she was replaceable, because in his world she was. "Yes," she said quietly, "it is." Jerry's scowl deepened, but he waved her away. "Fine, but don't make this a habit." She wouldn't, because somehow, standing in that grimy office with the schedule printouts and the smell of old coffee, Elena knew that her time at the Copper Kettle was ending. It had been a refuge when she needed one, a paycheck that kept her and Sophia fed and housed, but it had never been a future. It had only ever been survival. Saturday morning dawned clear and cold, the rain finally taking a break, weak October sunshine filtering through the clouds. Elena dressed carefully in her best clothes, a pair of black pants from Target and a blue sweater that wasn't stained or torn, and helped Sophia into her favorite dress, the purple one with the flowers that she insisted on wearing to every special occasion. "Where are we going, Mama?" Sophia asked for the 10th time as they waited for the bus. "To see something interesting, a place where kids learn to play chess." "Like the game you've been playing on the computer?" "Exactly like that." "Am I going to learn?" Elena knelt down, looked into her daughter's bright, curious eyes. "Would you like to?" Sophia considered this seriously. "Is it hard?" "Very hard, but you're very smart, and I could teach you, like my papa taught me." "Okay, I want to learn." She paused, then added with the brutal honesty of 6-year-olds, "But only if we can get ice cream after." Elena laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuine joy. "Deal." The address Marcus had given her was in the Pearl District, one of Portland's recently revitalized neighborhoods where old warehouses had been converted into galleries and boutiques and expensive lofts. The academy occupied the ground floor of a renovated brick building with large windows that looked out onto a tree-lined street. Marcus was waiting outside, dressed more casually than Elena had seen him. Jeans, a sweater, expensive sneakers. He smiled when he saw them approaching, then knelt down to Sophia's level. "You must be Sophia. I'm Marcus. Your mom told me you're very smart." Sophia, usually shy with strangers, studied him with solemn intensity. "Are you the man who played chess with my mama?" "I am. She beat me pretty badly." "Mama's good at everything."
I know. That's why I wanted to show her something special. Marcus stood, pulled out a set of keys, and unlocked the door. "Come on, let me give you the tour." The space inside took Elena's breath away. The walls were painted warm cream, with skylights letting in natural light that made everything glow. There were 12 chess tables, each with a beautiful wooden board and weighted pieces. Bookshelves lined one wall, already partially filled with chess books and theory manuals. A comfortable seating area occupied one corner, with couches and armchairs arranged around a coffee table that held a master-level chess set, the pieces carved from dark and light wood with incredible artistry. But what caught Elena's attention most were the walls themselves. They were covered with photographs, not just of famous chess players, though those were there too, but of ordinary people playing chess in parks and community centers and schools. People of all ages, all races, all backgrounds, united by their love of the game. "This is beautiful," Elena whispered. "It's not finished yet. We need more books, more equipment, and most importantly, we need students and someone to teach them." Marcus gestured around the space. I've been working on this project for 2 years, but I needed the right person to run it. Someone who understood not just chess, but what chess can mean to kids who don't have many other opportunities to shine. Sophia had wandered over to one of the chess tables, her small hands reaching out to touch the pieces with reverence. "Mama, look how pretty they are." "They're beautiful, baby, but we have to be careful with them." "Actually," Marcus said, walking over to join Sophia, "these pieces are meant to be used. Would you like to learn how they move?" Sophia looked at Elena for permission. Elena nodded, her throat tight with emotion she couldn't quite name. For the next 30 minutes, Marcus taught Sophia the basics, how the pieces moved, their names, simple patterns. He was patient and encouraging, breaking down concepts into language a 6-year-old could understand. Sophia absorbed it all with intense concentration, her little face serious as she moved a knight in its characteristic L shape, as she learned that pawns could only move forward but captured diagonally. Elena watched them, remembering how her own father had taught her the same lessons in their kitchen in Sacramento, his carpenter's hands gentle on the pieces, his voice full of love and patience. The memory didn't hurt the way it usually did. Instead, it felt like a bridge connecting past and future, showing her that good things could be passed down, that love could echo forward through generations. Marcus caught her eye, smiled. "She's a natural. Get it from her mom." "She gets it from her grandfather," Elena corrected. "He's the one who taught me to see the board as a story, each piece a character with its own purpose." "I'd like to hear more about him sometime." Marcus stood, leaving Sophia to experiment with the pieces on her own. He gestured for Elena to follow him to the office space in the back, a small room with a desk, a computer, filing cabinets, and a wall covered with plans and timelines. "This is where you'd work when you're not on the floor teaching. Administrative stuff, scheduling, student records, ordering supplies, but the main job is working with the kids, teaching them and mentoring them. We're planning to start with 20 students, ages 8 to 14, meeting 3 times a week. You'd have an assistant coach, Dr. Bernard, actually. I've already talked to him, and he's enthusiastic about the program." Elena's eyes widened. "Dr. Bernard from the chess club?" "The same. He's been coaching for 40 years and jumped at the chance to work with talented kids who couldn't otherwise afford quality instruction." Marcus pulled out a folder and handed it to her. "This is the formal offer. Salary, benefits, job description, all the details. Take it home, read it carefully, ask questions. I need an answer by Wednesday if you're interested." Elena opened the folder, her eyes scanning the papers inside. Everything Marcus had promised was there, laid out in clear language. $60,000 a year, health insurance, dental, vision, 2 weeks paid vacation, professional development budget. It was more than she'd ever imagined, more than she'd let herself hope for. "Why are you doing this?" Elena asked, looking up at Marcus. "And don't tell me it's just about the chess academy. You could hire someone qualified, with experience. Why take a chance on me?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the street beyond. When he spoke, his voice was soft, almost vulnerable. "I told you I grew up in rural Oregon, right? My dad was a mechanic. We didn't have money for anything extra. But there was a librarian in our town, Mrs. Patterson, who ran a chess club every Thursday after school. She taught me the game when I was 9 years old, and she saw something in me that no one else had seen. Not talent exactly, though I worked hard to get good. She saw potential. She saw that I could think, plan, strategize, and she told me I could be more than what my circumstances suggested."
He turned back to Elena, his eyes serious. "Mrs. Patterson changed my life. Not because she taught me chess, though that mattered, but because she believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She showed me that intelligence and hard work could open doors I didn't know existed. I've spent 20 years building companies and making money, and it's been satisfying in its way. But nothing I've done has meant as much as what Mrs. Patterson did for that scared, poor kid in rural Oregon." "And you think I can be that for these kids?" "I know you can, because you've already been doing it for Sophia.
Because you've survived 15 years of grinding poverty without losing your spark, your intelligence, your ability to see beauty in a chessboard. Because when I played you that night, I didn't see a waitress who happened to know chess. I saw a master trapped in circumstances that had nothing to do with her worth. Elena felt something break open in her chest. All the walls she'd built around her dreams and her disappointments crumbling. She looked through the office door at Sophia, who was carefully setting up the chess pieces, her tongue poking out in concentration the way Elena's did when she was thinking hard. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I'm terrified that I'll fail, that I'm not good enough, that this will fall apart, and I'll have given up my job for nothing." Fear is rational. Fear means you understand the stakes. But fear shouldn't be the reason you say no to something that could change your life and the lives of dozens of kids who need someone like you. Elena took a deep breath, held it, let it out slowly. She thought about the copper kettle, about the water-stained ceiling of her apartment, about the exhaustion that never left her bones. She thought about her father's hands moving pieces across a board, about Coach Morrison's words about talent and choice, about Sophia's face lit up with concentration as she learned something new. I need to think about it. I need to talk to Sophia, make sure this is what's right for us. But Marcus? She met his eyes directly. Thank you. Whether I'd take this job or not, thank you for seeing me, for remembering, for offering this chance. Take your time. Well, take until Wednesday. He smiled. And Elena, I don't think you are going to fail. I think you're going to be extraordinary. They collected Sophia, who was reluctant to leave the beautiful chess pieces behind. Marcus walked them out, locked the building behind them, and handed Sophia a small gift bag before they left. What's this? Sophia asked, peering inside. A chess set of your own, so your mom can teach you at home. Sophia's face lit up with pure joy, and she threw her arms around Marcus's legs in an impulsive hug. Thank you! Marcus looked startled, then touched, his hand resting gently on Sophia's head. You're welcome. Take good care of those pieces. On the bus ride home, Sophia clutched the chess set like it was treasure, chattering about knights and pawns and all the things she was going to learn. Elena sat beside her, the folder with the job offer in her bag, her mind spinning with possibilities and fears in equal measure. They got ice cream as promised. Sitting in a small shop near their apartment, Sophia's face smeared with chocolate as she talked about chess and school and whether she could learn to beat her mama someday. You probably will. You're smart and stubborn, just like I was. Were you a champion, Mama, like in the movies? I was pretty good, but I stopped playing when I was young. Why? It was a simple question, but the answer was complex. Grief, responsibility, poverty, the thousand small ways life narrowed your choices until you forgot you'd ever had them. But Elena didn't want to burden Sophia with that weight, and didn't want her daughter to learn too early that dreams could be casualties of circumstance. Because I had to take care of my mama, and then I had you, and there wasn't time for both, Elena said carefully. But maybe that's changing. Maybe there's time now. I think you should play again, Sophia said with the certainty only children possess. Because you smile differently when you talk about chess, like it makes you happy inside. Elena felt tears sting her eyes for what felt like the 100th time that day. You're very wise, baby. I know, Sophia grinned, chocolate-stained and perfect. That's what Mrs. Kowalski says, too. That night, after Sophia was asleep with her new chess set arranged carefully on her nightstand, Elena sat at the kitchen table with the job offer spread in front of her. She read every word carefully, looking for catches or hidden problems, but it was straightforward and generous, more than generous. It was life-changing.
She opened her laptop, looked at her chess rating,
1580 now, climbing steadily. She'd been studying tactics every night, working through endgame puzzles, analyzing master games. The rust was falling away, and underneath was the player she'd once been, sharpened by 15 years of surviving instead of just living. Elena pulled out her phone, looked at Marcus's number, typed out a text message, and then deleted it. This wasn't something you did over text. This was something you did face-to-face, with full understanding of what you were choosing and what you were leaving behind. She thought about her father one more time, about his hands on the chess pieces, about his voice telling her that every choice echoes forward. She wondered what he would say if he could see her now, offered this impossible opportunity, standing at the edge of something that could be wonderful or disastrous or both. But she knew what he would say. He would tell her to be brave. He would tell her that talent unused was a tragedy. He would tell her that Sophia deserved to see her mother chase dreams, not just survive day to day. Elena picked up her phone again, this time calling instead of texting. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Elena, is everything okay?" "Yes. I just wanted to tell you something before I lost my nerve." "I'm listening." "You asked me Wednesday, but I don't need until Wednesday. I know my answer." She took a deep breath. "Yes, I want the job. I want to run your academy. I want to teach those kids. I want to do something that matters." There was a pause, then Marcus's voice came through warm and full of something that sounded like relief. "That's the best news I've heard in a long time. Welcome aboard, Elena. We're going to do something incredible together." "I hope so. I really hope so." "We will, trust me. And Elena, welcome to the rest of your life." They talked for another 20 minutes, working out logistics, when she would start, how she would give notice at the diner, what she needed to do to prepare. When Elena finally hung up, she sat in the quiet kitchen with her heart racing and her hands shaking and a smile on her face that felt like it might never leave. She had done it. She had chosen possibility over safety, dreams over survival, and she was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. Elena walked to her bedroom, looked at the $500 still sitting on her dresser, now supplemented by her tips from the past 2 weeks. She had nearly $800, more cash than she'd had at one time in years. She picked it up, held it, then carefully placed it in an envelope and wrote on the front, "Sophia's College Fund." It was a start. Just a start. But it was something. Elena Rodriguez's final 2 weeks at the Copper Kettle Diner marked the end of one life and the beginning of another. After 15 years of serving coffee and surviving paycheck to paycheck, she was leaving to become head instructor at Marcus Whitmore's new chess academy, a position that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Jerry, her perpetually scowling boss, predicted she'd return like all the others. But Elena knew this was different. This wasn't just another waitressing job. This was a door closing on her old life and opening onto something she'd barely dared to dream about. Her co-workers' reactions varied. Jennifer, the college student, bubbled with enthusiasm. Carlos, the taciturn cook, delivered perhaps his longest speech ever. "You are too smart for this place. I know this since you start. Go, be what you are supposed to be." His words, and the tears he tried to hide, struck Elena deeply. Mrs. Kowalski, her neighbor and Sophia's babysitter, kissed both her cheeks in celebration. When Elena confessed her fears of failure, the old Polish woman offered wisdom. "Fear is just love trying to keep you safe, but sometimes love must be brave, yes? You show that little girl that women can be more than what the world expects." Elena threw herself into preparation, studying chess relentlessly. Her rating climbed from 1650 to 1700. Dr. Bernard met with her twice weekly, teaching her pedagogy. Make them fall in love with the game before you worry about making them good at it. Show them the beauty first. She played him repeatedly, losing every time, but learning from each defeat. Marcus called regularly with contracts, insurance information, and encouragement. He shared his own failures, a startup that crashed spectacularly, a marriage destroyed by workaholism, teaching her that the question is what you do with those failures. Let them define you or let them teach you. Elena began reframing her past. Perhaps those 15 years of struggle hadn't been failures, but preparation.
Her final shift arrived on a cold November Sunday. Moving through the familiar routine, she saw the diner with new eyes. The cracked vinyl, coffee-stained menus, the ancient jukebox. She'd missed the regulars and the rhythm of the work, but not the exhaustion and invisibility. During a lull, Mr. Chen called her over for one last game. He revealed that he'd recommended her to Marcus weeks ago. I saw the talent hiding under the rust. He played a teaching game, creating beautiful combinations to illustrate concepts, ending with an elegant checkmate. These children you will teach, you give them this gift, he commanded, not just how to play, but how to see beauty in thinking, in planning, in the patterns of the world. At 11 p.m., Marcus appeared with a gift, a wooden box engraved with her name. Inside lay an exquisite tournament-quality chess set, ivory and ebony pieces perfectly weighted. You're not just a teacher, you're a player. Don't forget that part of yourself. They played while Jerry scowled impotently. Elena played brilliantly, the game extending deep into the endgame. She won by sacrificing her last bishop to create an unstoppable passed pawn. You've gotten stronger, Marcus acknowledged, much stronger. At midnight, Elena removed her apron forever. Carlos gave her empanadas for Sofia. Jennifer presented a card signed by everyone, with a bookstore gift certificate for your new office. Walking out at 12:15 a.m. for the last time, Marcus beside her, Elena looked back at the buzzing neon sign one final time. Then she looked forward toward the bus stop and tomorrow. Ready for what comes next? Marcus asked. Yes, she said. I'm ready. December brought a whirlwind of preparation. The academy opened its doors on the 1st, though classes wouldn't begin until January. Elena spent her days developing curriculum with Dr. Bernard, while Lisa, the new administrative assistant, handled logistics. Student recruitment through schools and community centers produced an overwhelming response, over 100 applications for 20 spots. Elena read each carefully, seeking not just talent, but hunger. She selected students like 10-year-old Marcus Chen, who'd taught himself chess from library books, possessing fierce intelligence but no formal training, and 12-year-old Keisha Washington, who wrote that chess helped her forget her mother's cancer treatments. The board was a place where she had control when everything else in her life felt chaotic. As January approached and Elena prepared to meet her first class, she understood that these children needed her to succeed. They needed to see what was possible when someone believed in them, when talent was nurtured rather than left to wither. Standing in the academy's bright, welcoming space, so different from the diner's fluorescent harshness, Elena thought about the journey from that first game with Marcus 6 weeks ago. She'd been invisible then, her potential buried under years of survival. Now she was visible. Now she had purpose. And 20 children were about to discover that chess, like life, rewarded those brave enough to see beyond their current position and imagine what they could become. Elena walked out of the copper kettle at 12:15 a.m. for the last time, Marcus beside her. The rain had stopped, and the streets gleamed under the streetlights. She looked back once at the neon sign, then looked forward toward the bus stop and everything that came next. "Ready?" Marcus asked. Elena thought of Sophia asleep at home, of the academy waiting, of 20 children who would soon learn that their minds were gifts. She thought of her father's hands on chess pieces, teaching her to see possibilities. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." The game was just beginning.